Oh, I guess. Oh my
Well,
gosh, the intro doesn't want to work. What's good, party people? This is According to Woods, and that intro it will be the death of me, I think. But yeah, well, I have the honor and privilege of talking to, I mean, former professional fighter, the host of the Transformation U podcast. He's the one and only James Chapman. James, how are you doing, my man?
I'm doing well. Thank you very much for having me on. This is an awesome opportunity. I love your intro, by the way. I love that intro. It reminds me of the old. For me, I'm dating myself. I'm 40, 42 now. So I used to have MTV. It would have that like show. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about with Colin Quinn. They would.
Yes.
Oh man, that those TVs remind me of that. So
What do you think I got the inspiration for? And I was even
love it.
like gonna go even further back with like Walter Cronkite and Dan
Yeah,
Rather and the whole news, and we're coming through the video with the video
I love
waves,
it.
so to speak. So
Yeah, I
yeah,
love it.
man. Uh, but dude, I mean, I love it because I mean there are so many things that you could do in terms of advancing your fight career, but like when you're in your career, you know, you're training for your next opponent, you're trying to develop your skills and what have you. And one thing that unfortunately kind of lacks, when you're in that mindset, and it's probably something that your coach hates, is entertaining outside opportunities, not just sponsors, but in a way to kind of promote yourself and your endeavors, maybe once the gloves get and the boots get hung up,
Yeah,
and for me, I love these type of things because it's like mixed martial arts is almost like a cannibalistic. Combat sports in general is cannibalistic, where they cannibalize their own history to kind of get to the next foray of whatever, next fight, next whatever. And without these conversations, those stories get lost. And I love those stories. They're better than
yeah,
the fight itself. They're the reason why you buy the fight.
yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, the stories of there's everybody's got a story. You know, everybody's got a story. When they always talk about, if you follow the UFC really well, or Bellator even now, like I remember the first days at AKA when I was in with Javier, and before Javier even had a kickboxing team, I was a 17-year-old kid who was watching him fight in Civic Center in San Jose, and I was just in awe of who he was, right? And I remember hearing my cousin who was 3 years older than me said, "Oh yeah, that's the Thunder. They used to call him Lightning, now they call him Thunder, Javier Menendez, because when he kicks somebody, it sounds like thunder." And he's like, "Go down to his gym and check it out." And I got down there, man, and it was something like I'd never felt before. And I said, "Well, I want to go in the ring." And they, at that time, and this is, I don't know if people know this, but it was Jean Claude Lier, who was a world champion French kickboxer, as well as the world. He was a K1 champion. There was a Jerome Tucan, who was, he was Savat champion, French champion. He had 80 amateur fights before he had his 80 pro fights, right? Phenomenal guys. And then there was Frank Shamrock was there. And Frank was just a normal guy, cool cat. And so these guys were there, and the whole cast of it's funny because they talk about the UFC or Tough One. That cast, that was my gym, right? The Tough One cast. That was Mike Swick, that was Mike Swick, Bobby Southworth. All these guys, these were my coaches, my friends. And I remember as it elevated, Javier came up to me. He goes, "Hey man, if you want to do kickboxing," he's like, "I know you play football. You're going to be going to college." He goes, "I want you to box back. You'll do your footwork for kickboxing." I said, "Okay." So I just thought of it as a long-term thing, right? Little did I know, when I come back in the summers, I was fighting amateur fights. And I would come back to football a little bit skinnier, and the coaches would be like, "Man, what'd you do all summer? You're quicker, you're faster." I said, "I just boxed." Like, they're like, "What?" "Oh, no, you couldn't do that." I'm like, "Yeah, I did that." Like, it's one of those things where I boxed and kickboxed. And so it became a thing where um, it was normal for me, but so abnormal for everybody else. It was when they were still guys weren't making money for fights. I fought a tournament in Mexico and I made nothing. I got nothing. I paid $400 to be there. I won four fights in 2 nights, and MMA fights, and I got nothing. And I was in debt. It was what we did. We loved it. We thought, "Oh, this is the greatest thing since sliced bread," and everybody wanted to do it because of you had pride, and we had we had all these guys that are on the wall that slowly grew, and Javier grew this list of men out of a glass shop to, a AKA gym on Williams Drive, or on on Hillsdale Drive, and that was like old school. Everybody there sweating and beating each other up, and it was amazing, man. Our stories just were so deep. We had John Fitch from Purdue. We had all these guys that were just coming in and wrestling, and they said, "Oh," I said, "Oh, I wrestled too." They go, "Why didn't you tell us you wrestled?" After 4 years, I never told them one time I wrestled. It's like that's the foundation of MMA. I'm like, oh, I didn't know that. Like, I became such a prolific striker there that Coach Javier would have me there, and you go, okay, I'd be amongst some of the greats before you see them as Hall of Famers. I'm sitting on a floor with them, and he would go, okay, guys, I'm gonna everybody tell me what you think you learned today. This is after fight camp. He goes, okay, Jim, I want you to give them instruction. He called me Jimmy. Jimmy, what did they do wrong? And everyone's looking at this kid over here. I'm like, he goes, you're the most, you have the most skills here and the most talent. They look at me like I knew something. Like it was those. I'm like, it was amazing. Me and Fitch would be like, okay, you got to turn your hips here. And it was one of those things where that was the first time I realized that he actually he respected me, he cared for me, but he would never say it. But when he did that, that was it. That was like the gift of the gods right there. When Coach Javier said something like that to you. So it was cool, man. I mean, there's story after story, from me getting in a fight with Josh Koscheck to me getting in a fight with Phil Baroni. Like these guys, all these guys, we just fought each other. Before Van, I got tons of stories. When remember Mike Van Arsdale, he fought Randy Couture. That's one of the funniest camps I've ever been a part of. Like that guy just, oh man. So I can go on for days with this, but it's just like
I'm not one to stop you.
Yeah, okay.
I'm not one to stop you. You're name dropping, and I'm like, oh, Van Arsdale, Javier Mendez, like, well, John Fitch. I'm like, please do. You know what? This might be the easiest podcast where you just say stories, and I just sit back in awe. How about that?
Oh no, it's fine. Yeah, but I remember it was okay. So check this out. This is how far back we go. So Fitch was they were casting for Tough One, and they said they really wanted some guys that had characters. They were looking to do like more of a reality TV. And I was already married. I was 24 years old, married. I ran into a wall of life. I was chaos on wheels, right? So I ran into this wall called my wife, and we got married, had kids, and I was full time working, full time boxing, kickboxing, but that was a career, but there was not enough money to make a career out of it. So I was doing construction. I have my own construction company, and everybody did construction. Bob Cook ran us as contractors. So he had his jobs with their investors, but he would hire me to do like tile work and stuff that he needed finished work. Me and Paul Buentello would go out on the jobs together, and Paul would never work. He would just do like Paul Buentello is one of those guys who's a phenomenal fighter, phenomenal athlete, but he'd be out on, these guys get paid construction money. To some of them would work, some of them wouldn't, right? So, but it was one of those deals where we're out there, and I just remember saying, this is the life, man. I got kids. I don't want to go anywhere else. And so when they asked me, do you want to go try out in Vegas? I said, why would I want to do that? Why would I want to do that? And so it just disappeared. And everybody's gone out of the gym at that time. And I remember, except Josh Thompson, he chose not to go. He didn't want, because he didn't get along with, at the time with the UFC. He was already in the UFC, actually. He was already in the UFC. And he had just got, I think he just got knocked out by Yves Edwards. And Buentello was already in the UFC. He was about to fight Arlovsky for the title. And so we were all
Seems like we froze for just a moment in time, but
yes, what's going to happen, guys? Nice. So we came back, and these guys were like, all of a sudden, this guy Josh Koscheck's there. Phil Baroni shows up. These guys show up out of everyone. Like, how did they get here? Who are these guys? And we felt like our home was ruined, right? But it wasn't. It was added to, and it was interesting because they just watched us. And at first, I used to think they were watching, like, browbeating you, but they were fascinated with the level of training we had. We had such good training. You don't know you have it good until you're not in it, right? That's just how it is. Anytime you go to a different gym, like, what is this? Oh, this is nothing, right? Well, I remember Fitch being and rolling around. He was a blue belt at the time. And I said, why didn't you go with them? He said, they didn't want me. I said, what do you mean they didn't want you? That is fun. And he goes, you're like 5-0, 6-0. He goes, yeah, I didn't have enough I didn't talk enough trash or whatever it was. It was like, they didn't like I said, are you kidding me? I said, you're going to be one of the best in the world. He goes, you think so? We were drinking water. I go, yeah, dude. I said, you're phenomenal. Do you know how good you are? And he didn't believe it. He didn't believe it. And it was funny because it was a year later, he was in the UFC, and then he did that 15 fight winning streak. Then he fought GSP, and they used that to kind of like boot him out. But it was one of those deals where I remember watching these guys like just go through the ringer for the UFC, for anywhere, Pride, Bellator, and you would go through their camps with them. Train. I would do Strike Force. I would do local kickboxing fights. I did my amateur boxing. I did Golden Gloves, all that stuff. I boxed, and we had Mike Kyle, who's in our gym, great guy, one of the nicest guys you'll ever meet. But he gets a bad rap because he's known to be a dirty fighter. He's not dirty. He's just sometimes stupid, right? He makes dumb mistakes. He'll say it. He's like, I just got in the heat of it, right? But it was one of those things where these guys, every single one of them, Koscheck, Fitch, Thompson, Swick, all these guys, Velasquez, all these, it was like a team. It was like a family, right? The family kept growing and growing and growing. And this was one of the things how I knew we were a family, because you look at Bellator now. Scott Coker at the time was Strike Force. Okay.
Yeah.
He would purposely he would go into debt 6 times a year just so we can stay fighting as kickboxers. Like he cared that much about the martial art itself. So he would throw up he'd put up 20 grand of his own money just to make 2 grand for a night. I would never put up 20 grand to make 2 grand. That's too high of risk. But he would do it, right? He would do it just so we had fights and we can make money doing it. And yeah, it's amazing. And so we took guys like that. We have a guy like Scott who would just look after the fighters, and then they would be protective. So Javier would always protect his fighters too. That's one of the things I always said, is that I know coaches who just want to get your career going so they can make money. If most coaches, like the good coaches, know there's no money in coaching guys until they're like up there. And even when they're up there, they're not getting paid what they should get paid. The coaches should get paid way more than they get paid. They get paid. They're like a loan shark, right? Not a loan shark. They're like a loan agent. They put out the money themselves, their time, hoping to get a return. And so they'll work for a year with the guy, and he may lose 3 fights in a row, and they'll get nothing at all, because they feel too bad for their kid who just lost, right? So Javier would literally, like he would be traveling every weekend. He'd always be gone for fight. We had a board where guys would be going, okay, I'm going here, we're going there. Some guys go to Russia, just crazy stuff, right? And you got Bob Cook, who was the brains of it. And so you had Javier and Bob Cook, both the brainchilds. And then they got Dwayne Zinkin involved, and they would literally create like some of the greatest managing and recruiting I'd ever seen. They were the ones going to high schools and wrestling before anybody ever thought of wrestling. Like that's how smart they were. And Bob Cook, he was the only like manager who would kick your ass. Like he would kick your butt hard because he can fight. No joke fight. He was in the UFC. I mean, he fought in one of the earlier UFCs, and he's one of those guys that you see him with his jean shorts on after like going to the job, and he come out there and he's got his little belly, and he just beating the crap out of people. It was hilarious, man. And but Bob Cook and Javier, and it was just, those guys were just phenomenal. But I'll tell you this, one of the funny stories I like to tell is there's a couple of them, because they're funny. We all laugh about it now, but like King Velasquez, they recruited him from ASU, right? And we were at the old gym still, and he had never fought. And I was training for my fight for my world title for the kickboxing. And I was there during fight camp from 12 to 2 because I wanted to get some sparring in. And I remember getting done with my hard, heavy tie pad work. Like Jean-Claude Lier was my coach, and Derek Ewan were all world title guys, world champions. And he broke me in the ring that day, and I was exhausted. And then this big old Mexican dude walks in there with his big Cro-Magnon head, Cain Velasquez, and everyone's got an ASU thing on, and we're looking at him, we're going, what is this going on here? And he was the nicest, most genuine guy. And I remember him coming in and kind of like, okay, what do you want me to do? And Javier goes, let's put him with Jimmy. He's the only one's got like wrestling right now. And I'm like, I'm not going in there with that guy. I don't know who he is. I got to fight. He was like, no, just go in there, work with him, feel him out. And I see everybody kind of looking like, dude, what's he doing? I said, oh, I'll go with him. So we're in the middle of the gym, and and I didn't know that Cain was trying out for the team. So he's thinking like, this is life and death. So I'm messing around with him. He's not throwing really good punches. He's kind of everywhere, but he's got some. I look at his base and I'm like, dude, this guy, if he shoots on me, I'm done. right? And so I throw a head, I do a question mark kick uh, as I back up, question mark kick, and Jerome Turcon knocked me out with that in practice when I was like 18 years old. So I remember this, like he taught me the kick down the road, but I did it to him, and as I backed up, he took it off the dome, picked me up, and slammed me on my head, and I go, ow. And then he starts wailing on me. And Coach Javier says, I think we've seen enough. And he goes, Jimmy, you okay? I just look up. I go, are you kidding me? Like, it was like crazy. And Kane picked me up. He's like, sorry, dude. I'm like, it's all good, dude. It was one of those things. Like, that was my interaction, though, right? I'm training. This guy's never fought, and he took my leg kick off his face and dropped me on my head, just like that. Just so simple. Like, it was like so smooth in the transition, and I was so just very in awe of who he was. And he was a workhorse. He was known for the workhorse mentality. So you see like a horse at a horse race that had that like froth behind their mouth, their bit. He was like that, but he never had the froth. So he was running. We'd go do sprints and 800s and 400s. He never looked like he was tired. Like, just never wore. That's why they had that nickname for him, Sea Level Kane. You got him on sea level, nobody will beat him in the world. You get him above sea or below sea level or above sea level, like elevations high, he loses his win because that one fight he lost. That one fight he lost to Verdum in Mexico City. So everyone said Verdum didn't beat him. The air beat him, right? Because he waited to go out there a week of the fight when he should have been out there 2 months prior to the fight. Because that atmosphere will kill you. It'll literally just suck the life out of you. But Velasquez was one of those guys who you never wanted to go with unless you really wanted to learn or you wanted to get better. No one would go with him because they did. But then only because when they're new, when the guys are new, they're good to work with. They're good to fight with, but they're not good to like drill with because they just keep going hard and hard. And guys are like, I don't want to go with him. He's too hard. But what Kane did is he brought a different level to it. He brought a level to it, like, no, we can drill hard and not get tired. We can drill hard to get better. We can drill hard and be under control, power under control, right? And that was the goal. And so he taught people. So he became the master in there. He became the guy over years that just became the teacher of everybody. I mean, so it was just amazing. And I would say that Kane. So Kane and Luke Rockhold came in when I was about to turn 30 by that time. So I'd been like with Javier like 13 years at that point. And Luke Rockhold was coming in from Santa Cruz, and he was becoming a Strikeforce phenom. And I had just bought a house, our second house, and I had 2 kids. I was full go kids house, and I had already started preaching every Sunday. So I was in ministry, construction, and fighting for 3 years prior to that, full time. So I was, and I became a Christian right when I ended up meeting my wife, became a Christian, got married, and then fell into a pastoral role, which I never was supposed to do. I mean, I never knew what even a Christian was, right? But I became that, and that became my identity. And guys, it actually brought me into a better level of fighting and more understanding. My fight IQ went up because of my faith. It wasn't because I just like, I'll never get hurt. It was the idea of I can have power under control, which is meekness, right? You can have aggression and rage, but you can do it in a way that it's about a chess match. It's not about just destroying somebody. Whereas Christianity almost broke. Who is it? Gosh, I can't think of his name. Rory McDonald. He almost ended his career because he didn't understand. I sent him a tweet like when he first tried to quit. I tweeted to him some passages, and then I sent him a private message, telling him that the greatest thing he can do is be a Christian, have a platform, and be a new example of what we're. What it's supposed to
Looks
be
like we
like.
got.
PNS, don't. Are you good? No. So, you hear me okay?
It just stalled for a little bit. It looked like it was like a connection issue, like there was
Yeah. Was
a
that with you
lag.
or with me? Is that with us? Me?
Yeah, there's just a little bit of lag, but it's fine. It's
Okay.
absolutely fine.
Okay. So, what I was going to say is that So, by the way, I was driving from my Austin to my house where I have a studio in the garage. I built one during coronavirus, and I was driving this morning. I left and I put all my equipment, my actual studio equipment, in my containers that I roll with. I said, just in case I can't get back in time, I got stuck in traffic. I pulled off and I'm like, oh, there's a Hilton hotel. I'm in a Hilton hotel right now. I rolled up in here during coronavirus and just started laying my stuff out. And they're like, I'm like, hey man, I promise you I'll mention Hilton Hotel. So thank you for Hilton Hotel. We're good to go. So
I think that's, I mean, tremendous. And I mean, there's so much to unpack, right? I mean, because I mean, just like right off the bat, and I mean, you can answer them as you see fit because you mentioned, Coach Javi and Crazy Bob Cook. We saw a little bit of, and it was like a low key hit of mine, of a favorite of mine. But there was a show based on AKA on like the Spanish language.
yes,
You
yeah,
remember that, right?
I remember. Yeah, they were there. I was there when they were filming. Yeah,
Oh, okay.
yeah,
So,
yeah,
I mean, so we talked about I mean, they talked about the synergistic relationship between, Crazy Bob and Javi, and especially with DC coming in and all of that stuff. But I mean, can you speak to us about their relationship as you know it? And then I also want you to get into like you said, Kane was trying out, so I want you to tell us about the AKA, the previous incarnation of AKAs, like rigid, you know, team tryouts, because we've heard about those and those are legendary. So, I
yeah.
mean, go ahead and have at it, my
Yeah.
man.
So we had my experience is that when Javier was when he took it from a glass shop to he literally was training as a glass shop. He had some of the they had world champion kickboxers that were only that maybe in a lifetime made 10 grand at a fight. Maybe that was like his. I remember his title fight in '97. He won $35,000, and that was like the biggest hit he ever had. And that's how he got his gym, right? But that gym became like the a staple point in San Jose. It became literally on Hillsdale Avenue. Everyone knew that that's where AKA is. That's where that's their meat grinder. But what the people didn't know is all from the morning till the night. It was moms and kids. That's where his money was made. Is moms and kids. They would be in there. You got wives in there, moms in there, getting like in the best shape of their life, feeling good about themselves, healthy. And he always encouraged that healthy. He always encouraged kids being in there. He was never so like prideful. No one like you would have never known he'd fought. He never talked about it. Never carried himself. He never said anything. Bob Cook's the same way. Never would talk about it. And most like was that me? Because I can change my Wi-Fi if I need to. Was that me?
You're good.
Okay. Yeah. So I
Yeah.
remember thinking that these guys, most fighters that do what they do, they don't talk about it because it's not something it doesn't identify. It's not who their identity is. And even though it is today, that's all they want to do is know I'm a fighter. Da 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 da. And the problem with that is that nobody really like. There's a few people that care, but in the grand scheme of things, being a fighter is not going to help you at golf or basketball or it's a survival sport. And when you gotta close a deal and you're sitting to some guy who went to school and he got his education and he looks at
Yeah.
you and says, I see a meathead and you got to talk eloquently. You better realize that your fighting skills don't add up in there. That maybe the pressure that you felt, the anxiety,
Yeah.
you can deal with that. Yeah, that's great. But you have to be meek in every situation in order to truly rise to the top. And that's what DC has. That's why DC is so great, right? That is why not only DC, but you'll see like Paul Felder, who's in the UFC. That guy's got a great head on his shoulder. Like his mind is phenomenal. That's why he kind of leaked into the commentating. He's like one of the best commentators now. But where you can see some guys their character gets them there. But you got a guy like DC who's just a genius when it comes to this stuff. But I remember so DC came in, by the way. He entered into Hillsdale Gym as I moved away for dang, I moved into Santa Cruz Mountains because we bought another house, and my wife wanted to get away from San Jose at the time. It was only 20 minutes away, or no, it was 45 minutes away. But I had a brand new baby, and we had moved over there. So DC comes in, and Luke Rockwell comes in kind of at the same time. Kane's already been there, but DC came in to be a wrestling coach, and so he was there to coach at AKA. He wasn't there to fight. He was going to be a coach. He just did his Olympic bid, and I remember hearing about it. So they would invite me down there to train them with guys like for their fights. And I would go over there to the hill and train, and then I'd go back to work, and I loved it. I loved doing it. But one of the things is that was the time when I can't think of the guy's name he fought, but Phil Baroni and I would get into it all the time, right? Phil Baroni is one of the New York. They call him the New York Badass. The guy's hilarious. He's one of the nicest guys. If he likes you, but he's even if he doesn't like you, he's still kind of he's just a nice guy. You can't really take him serious. I used to, as a kid, you think, oh, he's just a jerk. No, I remember, put it this way. This is funny. Phil Baroni. I was sitting in my friend's house in college. I was at ASU, and I was sitting in his house for UFC 100, and they were doing the UFC's top 20 knockouts in between like a halftime thing. And they showed Phil Baroni's original punch where he punched the guy in the head like 13 times. And the guy bounced off the cage.
Yeah.
That thing, I almost threw up in my mouth when I saw that because I was just like, oh, that's so. Dude, I would never want to get hit by that guy. I was thinking in my head like that. I said, if I ever sparred with that guy, he would be dangerous because I saw the way he hit. Because he knew the guy was out, but he was still wailing him. He got invigorated from that, right? And I remember thinking to myself, if I ever had to spar with that guy, I don't know what's happening. I wonder if I'm getting called. I don't know what's happening.
It's probably you're getting a notification.
I'm not
probably
getting a notification. I put it on do not disturb, but I'll keep going.
No worries.
Okay. What
You continue on. I'm like, man, I need to get my popcorn out because this is great.
So I'll invite you on my podcast so we can talk about you. So we're gonna do that too. So I remember getting a call. So flash forward a year later, Phil Brody moves to San Jose to be at AKA, and I remember traveling over there and going, "Oh my!" I heard Javier yelling at some guys like, "Phil, knock it off, be practice." I'm like, "That's not Phil Baroni, is it?" And Josh looked over at me, and Josh Thompson was his character. He said, "He goes, hey Jimmy, what's up?" I go, "Hey man," I go, "Who's that?" He goes, "Oh, that's NYB." I'm like, "What?" He goes, "New York Badass." He made a joke. He was making a joke. I'm like, "Really?" He's like, "Yeah, the guy's a hothead. Be careful." Like, I'm like, "Okay, whatever." He goes, "No, you're sparring him today." I'm like, "No, I'm not." Like, I was sparring him. So I remember, like, I was exhausted. I was building this like fireplace. I was doing masonry work, building this fireplace. I drove over the hill just so I could spar a couple of the fighters to get them some work. So I sparred Mike Matt Kyle, and then I sparred John Fitch. And by the way, I'll talk to you about him. John Fitch is phenomenal. I sparred Baroni, and Baroni, his coach was Jerome Tricon, and Jerome was a French savant fighter. The way he would train his fighters is if you knew you were his fighter for that camp, you knew you were going to get the crap beat out of you by Jerome. He would beat you up. He didn't care. You go 10 rounds, he would beat you up. You would limp. You're done, right? Whereas my coach would be like, okay, I'll go hard with you, but I'm going to go southpaw. I won't go orthodox. So he switched stances for you. Make it harder on him, still hard on you, right? But anyways, so I go in there with Baroni, and I realized that I could tag him. I could tee off him. Like, I was just seeing everything. And I'm sparring him, and you're not supposed to tell sparring stories, but I say this because it's funny. So I remember hitting him and thinking, I'm causing this guy brain damage because I was touching him too much. And it was out of fear. I didn't want to get hit, so I'm just pop, pop. But I was doing it really light. And now when you're dancing with somebody, you say, okay, you lead, I lead. So I would do this thing where I'd initiate the dance, like, okay, I pitter patter it out there, nice and easy, kind of flow, nice and slow, kind of the 30%. And then Jerome goes, hey Jimmy, you got 20 rounds until you do this right. I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, I want you to go at him. I'm like, no. He's like, yes. I'm like, okay. So we did 13 5-minute rounds. The first 3 were warm-ups, and I'd already sparred. And I go, Jerome, I said I can't do anymore. He goes, no, I need you to spar with him. He's like, just throw your leg kicks. I'm like, no, I'll kill him. I'm not doing that. He goes, no, throw your leg kicks. I need him to start checking kicks. I'm like, okay. So I jab, hook, leg kick. His face started getting a beet red, and I didn't know if he was gonna kill me, or if he was going to like stop, because I was breaking his femur. Like his femur was just getting swelled up. I go, Jerome, I'm not doing this anymore. And Javier came in. Javier and Bob Cook, they would when Baroni would spar, they would leave because they didn't want to put up with him. So it was like this because he had such a hot head, and so if he got beat up, he would make the guys stay in there, and they're like, "We're done sparring." He's like, "No, get him back in here." So they went and had sushi, and they come back and they're like, "Oh, is that Jimmy in there?" He goes, "Yeah." He goes, "Oh no!" Like I heard him go, Coach, get me out of here." He goes, "You're on your own, bud." And I go, "Okay." So I'm like joking, and so but Phil, and this is how him and I became friends. Phil, he sees the crowd and gets jacked up, hyped. He's like, "Oh, there's a fight now." I'm like, "Oh, great, thanks, guys." I yelled at him, "Get out of the gym now! Get out of the gym! Like, get out of the gym!" I told the guys, "Get out." They're like, "No." They walk, they're all around there. Now we're in a gym war, right? Now everyone's like kind of around the ring, kind of hands on there. Let's go. They're giving you orders, and I remember going, "This is stupid. This is so stupid." I got a baby at home, and I'm just thinking about all these things, and so we're in round 7. We're in round 7, and Phil's he's teeing off on me. He's beating me up. He's outboxing me. He's a phenomenal boxer. But I was still touching his head. But I felt bad. Like I had this thing inside of me. There was a point like where Rory McDonald talked about you almost feel bad for hurting somebody. It's not because you're not wanting to hurt them. It's because you know that they're not recognizing the damage themselves. You're basically taking debt out on their life, and they don't know it. And that's something that you have to live with as a fighter. Did I just decrease your lifespan, right? And 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 people do that to you too. I know, I'm aware of that. I struggle with some of those things, and so we end up by the 9th round, it's full go. We're 120%, and I start kicking the inside of his leg, the outside of his leg. I start hooking him, head kicking him, and I'm just chewing him up. And then he feels like he's losing, but if you look at the whole span of it, he's probably up by 2 rounds. He's beating me. And I wasn't ashamed of it. It wasn't like a big deal. It was a big sparring match. And we get to the end, the last round, we're 30 seconds in. And he kind of, the first time he ever reached his hand down and said, "Good job." Like before the fight ends, I'm like, "Oh, great. This means we're going to have to go." And so he touches me up and he just starts going after me. I start to back up and he throws his first leg kick and I check it. And he screams, "Mother effer," because I hurt him. And the bell rings and I go to get up. Boom, right there, right back into the corner, on the side, right here. And I went like this, boom, like that. And I'm laying there kind of like this. And I hear Javier screaming, "F out of my gym," like that. And I go, "Nope, it's okay." I get up and I shake it off. I go, "Nice punch, man. I'll see you tomorrow." And he goes, "Yeah, I'll see you tomorrow." And Javier goes, "Are you going to come here?" I say, "I'm going to chew him up tomorrow again, too." And like it was kind of like this thing. He came up to me that morning because we had to do cardio together because I was working with him through his camp. We do cardio together. We're on the Airdyne bike, and he looks over at me. He goes, "My leg hurts so bad." I go, "I can't turn my neck. Get over it." Like just like kind of a thing. Like we're joking, but we became friends that way. We became friends, and it was like it was a respect thing. It was not like, "Oh, hey, call me, we'll hang out." It was we liked each other. We appreciated who each other were, and I deeply cared for his career because I knew he was struggling. He wasn't on a good streak. He needed help emotionally and physically. He needed to know that he was still who he was, but he didn't believe it. He wanted to believe it, but he didn't believe it. And if you watch his last few fights, you know that. If you watch it, I mean, his bare knuckle premiere was one of the most saddest things I've ever seen. Like it breaks my heart actually to think like that's what no fighter ever wants to do that.
Right.
No fighter ever wants to be in that position. And yeah, so God bless him. He's in Las Vegas. He's doing his thing. He's connected, but he's not trying to do a bunch of stuff like he hurt himself, which is good. But he was going through a lot, man. And like guys like that, you feel for. Van Arsdale, before, he was one of the hardest guys to work with for camp. When he fought Couture, I mean, I had no idea who he was. I didn't know he was that high level wrestler. I had no idea because at that time I was in and out of the game. So I was always training to stay in shape and to take my fights, but I wasn't in the gym all the time because I lived 40 minutes away. And so I was I was training in Santa Cruz. My coaches would come out there. I'd go into San Jose and spar, but I remember they go, "Hey, we need you for 6 weeks. We got this guy Van Arsdale," and they thought I knew who he was. I'm like, "All right, what's his name again?" And I couldn't remember his name ever. But he was the nicest guy too. And I remember one of the guys, Bobby Southworth, says, "Hey, Jimmy, you can't really chew up his legs like that. He's got a championship fight." I go, "Okay, great. I don't want to do it." And then Coach Bob Cook says, "Look, I don't care if you break his leg. If he wants to fight Couture, he's not going to embarrass himself." He's like, "So you take his leg out." And so we sparred that day. 2 weeks later, we spar like every time together, and we're goofing around. He just take me down, beat me up. I get up, beat him up, but he dominated me. He was such a good high level wrestler, and I wrestled in high school, a little bit of college, but I wasn't good like him. That's a whole different pedigree. And he ended up one day before sparring, he comes up to me, and goes, "Hey, just don't kick my leg today at all." I go, "Don't punch me." I said, "I can't do that." He goes, "No, don't kick my legs, please. It hurts too much. I can't even check your kicks." And I go, "Yeah, but you keep taking me down and beating the crap out of me." And he goes, "I'll go easier on you if you don't kick my legs." And we're working it out to each other because we're beat up, we're tired. And I go, "All right, I won't kick her legs." The bell rings, he double legs me and beats the crap out of me. It was like, but it was one of those things that I get up the second by the third round, I get back in because we did a round robin. It was fresh guy, fresh guy, fresh guy, fresh guy, 5 rounds in a row. So he had to go through 5. I did twice. Man, I chewed his leg up bad. He was limping, and you go, "Why'd you do that?" I go, "You broke the code first, dude." I go, "You violated the boundary. You said you would do it. I didn't do it until you told me to." I said, "I didn't tell you to." I said, "When you double leg me and beat the crap out of me, you told me to." Like I said, "I don't care if cameramen are here filming you." Like, no. But
Yeah,
those are fun stories. It's not like there's no hard feelings. It's like it's part of
no.
fighting. That happens all the time though. Like no one talks about this stuff. It's just fun. It's not a beef. It's not like something where you know.
And it's cool that you're on the outside of it now because I mean that's kind of taboo to like, oh, I tapped this guy out on whatever, and then you might say that wherever, and then your training partner hears it, and then now they want to go 100% on you. So it's good that you're far and away enough that
Yeah.
you can share these stories. And again, I mean, it's not a bad thing. These are just camaraderie things. That's why you and Thompson, you and DC, you and like Rockhold and all of these guys are close, and that's what makes your team closer. Because you have. I mean, you can't tell your wife, you can't tell your kids about things like this.
Yeah.
Like just like even in like a fight, right? Your coaches, the only people that can know what you went through is your opponent. Like
Yeah.
every fight that I've been to, literally my favorite part of the fight is when the bell rings and everybody's shaking hands, hugging, whatever, because it's just like, hey, if these guys, these gals, literally went through war and they're cool about it, then what the hell are me doing out here on
Yeah.
the outside?
Yeah. No, I know. Absolutely. Um, I know that that there's something I would say there's something very spiritual about fighting. It's ingrained in us. There's a natural desire to wrestle, to move around. Like my son's 12, right? He's gonna be 13 in October. He's a very strong kid, physical, but he's the furthest thing away. He doesn't want to wrestle. He doesn't want to do any of that stuff. And I'm okay with it. He
Yeah,
plays Rainbow Siege Six, some
yeah,
Rainbow Six Siege or Fortnite or something like that. And he
yeah.
like he's like in the gym and that doing that he's like in the gym and I've had to understand like that's how he does it. He also plays football though, which he likes doing. But it's funny to see the kids today like their way of camaraderie is different, right? Whereas you get punched in the face, you get knocked down. Is what it is. One of the things I was going to say is that one guy who I thought always, I mean, the cool thing about the gym that I love that I deeply missed, and my wife actually, I remember her telling me she's like, you and those guys are like family. You're always together. I never not hear you talk about them. And it was a hard thing because every fighter's wife knows what this is. They knows that they're competing with, not only they're not only competing for their husband's attention, but they're competing against all the other men that he spends time with all day. He spends time with these guys that they roll. They all have the same dream, blood, sweat, tears. And here's the reality of it: most don't make it. Most don't make it. I didn't make it. I had opportunities, but I did not make it because not only because I had to make choices. Hey, I can't do it. I got a mortgage to pay. Or I had 2 opportunities at the tough show. I chose not to go twice. because um, I had responsibilities. And my responsibility, and I thought, and I remember Coach Javier telling me, give me 2 years like these guys do. He's like, you're already one of the best in here, but if you gave me 2 years like what these guys do, you'll be a world champion. I go, I don't got it. I don't have 2 years in me, but I did. I just didn't think about it, right? To this, my family would be better off at this point because there's no doubt. Because here's what I'm going to say, and I'm going to brag. I'm going to brag a little bit, very little bit. I don't brag a lot, but I'll brag a little bit. I left the game for almost 6 years straight. No fighting, no. I didn't wrap my hands, nothing. I stepped away at 34 years old. No, 33. Didn't talk to Javier, any of the fighters, none of the guys. Saw John Fitch here and there. They would ask me, hey, they would call occasionally, where you at? My old coach would call. And it was when Jean-Claude Lier, my coach, decided he was going to move to Los Angeles and be an actor. And I thought that was foolish. But I loved him so much. I didn't want him to leave. But he ended up becoming a stunt actor within a month. I mean, it was his dream to do that. And he's on every movie you can ever imagine. And he's on some of the karate movies. And I'm like, praise God, he did that. He had the faith to do it. He went out and did that. At the same time, his wife was cheating on him and left him. He did this, and he had a daughter, and he went through hell and took everybody's stuff, and he overcame it. And I'm so proud of that guy, man. So proud of him. He's one of my best friends, like really is. But when he coached me, he always gave me a reality of where my life was going, because he was one of the best in the world. And you see him go against Peter Arts and Remy Bonjowski, but he was struggling just like everybody else, and he had a little bit of a slur in his speech, and I started picking up some stuttering patterns, and I didn't know what it was. And I remember telling Javier, and he goes, "Yeah, Jimmy," he goes, "You."
Man, these stories are incredible. Man, I mean, this almost should be Tales from that Kickboxing Academy podcast.
Yeah, it really should. It really should. So I did 11 years of.
Hey guys.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
you're good.
I was going to say. So here's what I was going to say is that when I left the game, Scott Coker was living in Willow Glen, which is okay. Where are you originally from? Where are you originally from?
San Francisco.
Okay, so did you ever go to the Fairtex gym in there?
I never went because I mean we left in '92, and then by '95 we were in LA. So
Okay, have you lived in LA ever since?
Yeah, and
Cool.
that's after that. I mean, that's after sojourns in Fiji, Indiana, Vegas, New Mexico, and Georgia, respectively. So
Nice.
I didn't, and that's kind of it here because like I would have done karate, I would have done a lot of different things, but we were always moving, And
Yes.
then when we came to the LA area in Inglewood, I mean, there was only like one, like Gracie Baja, like off the 405 and whatever, and
Yeah.
it was like, I mean, it was eons, literally like eons
Yeah.
of dollars to
Oh
join.
yeah.
So,
Yeah. Crazy.
yeah, my parents weren't in the position to do that. So
Yeah.
I think that's kind of manifested into this. If you play like a game of outliers, right? Well, okay, my grandfather, my mom's father in Fiji, was a broadcaster, and when I was watching wrestling as a kid of the '80s, he was like, "Look at the guys in the." I was like, I'm half Fiji and half black. I've got women in my family that are 6 foot plus, right? And I'm going to be a giant, and I'm going to wrestle in Japan until I blow my knees out, and then I settle into a commentator's position somewhere, WWE, CW, wherever, right? And then I saw Pride, and then I filled out to all of 5'9". I know, super gigantic, right? But but you gotta play these outliers. If I had done it, would I have gotten into this? So if DC had won a medal in the Olympics, would he become a double champion and commentator and Strikeforce Grand Prix champion? Or Ronda won a
Yeah.
gold, anything above a bronze in that Olympics. Would she go on to what she went through? So it's fun to play a game of outliers. So for me, I wouldn't change anything for the world, but it's like that's what makes these kind of stories like. I'm just sitting back. I'm all like, this is my history. This is a history of things that I love and being told to me on a platform that I've been able to
Yeah,
create by people such as yourself, amateur, pro, whatever, anybody that wants to talk and shoot those DMs and say, "Hey, let's do something." Like
right.
now, it's all kind of encompassed itself.
Yeah, it is. It's very. It becomes a cumbersome. Everybody can say, okay, I was a part of that era. That was part of that. Because if you don't tell your story, it gets lost. That's why I firmly believe in people understanding their heritage and where they're from. Know your background, know your history, because it'll give you two. It'll give you two ideas. It'll tell you where you're going, or to tell you where you don't want to go. Right. So it's the best things you can always do. You understand you got to understand your failures and your successes, because you'll know where you desire to be. Even in a success, you're like, man, I don't feel like that was a success. That was a failure. Like I can tell you all the failures that us as men have had as fighters because of fighting. You know, instead of being successful in the areas, we lost our. We got too big. We drank a little too much of our own, Kool Aid, and what people do that all the time. But what I was saying is that in Willow Glen, California, where is part of the Bay Area, it was only about 5 minutes from the gym. Scott Cook would eat at this place called Noah's Bagels. It was a very, very popular bagel place. I'm sure they have it still in California, Noah's Bagels or whatever they call it, Einstein Bagels. And Willow Glen's a very wealthy area in Los Gatos. And we had found out we'd moved back over the hill. I'd had a nice construction company, I had a church over there. And I'm going to this coffee shop every morning because I'm dropping my kids off. Well, I start to notice these two girls I've seen fight all the time, Jane Elsko and another girl. And what's it called? I forgot her name. She actually got her last fight was against Cyborg, and then she ended up Gina Carano. It was Gina Carano. So
Oh
Gina
yeah,
Carano,
yeah.
she and Jane were sitting in a coffee shop and they were talking. I remember walking up and someone goes, "Is that James Chapman?" They kind of whisper, and I go,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Scott's like, "Jimmy." And I look at him like, "Scott." At this point, I'm 38 years old, 265 pounds, huge. I fought at like 205, right? I walked around at 215. So I was huge. I was fat. It was like I was like the great white hype. I was just disgusting, right? And I was sitting there eating my food. He goes, "Jimmy, how you feeling, man?" I'm good. He goes, "Oh, what's up with you?" He's like, "You, what are you doing?" I go, "Nothing. Just eating, working, eating, raising kids, church." He goes, "Oh, really? Still?" Yeah. And Jane goes, "We're looking for a fighter. You want to fight?" And I go, "Are you kidding me?" I said, "It's been like 6 years. I haven't even stepped in the gym." She goes, "Have you been over to the new gym yet?" I go, "No, I left right when they left the gym. They built the new gym. There's built this amazing, beautiful gym in San Jose, aka. If you ever get a chance, go online. You can look at when Frank Shamrock does the. Oh, I got Frank Shamrock stories. We'll have to do two of these one day. So I have Frank Shamrock stories too. So he does Frank Shamrock did a televised walkthrough of the gym. It's on YouTube.
Yeah, yeah.
But we end up. He goes, "Hey, look, I got this show coming up, and I'd love for you to be an alternate." I go, "You realize I haven't trained or fought?" He's like, "Dude, you could fight for 5 minutes." He's like, "I'll put you at heavyweight. The guy you're fighting is heavyweight, and just knock him out." I go, "You really believe?" He's like, "I guarantee you." He's like, "I'm going to call Javier and tell him that you're going to the gym tomorrow." And I went home to my wife and told her, "Hey, I think I'm fighting again." And she goes, "Okay." Like, just kind of like, but she thought it was joking. She heard me for 5 years say, "I'm going to get back in shape. I'm going to get back in shape." I found my gear in the garage. I walked into the gym and Javier almost dropped his coffee. He goes, "Is that Jimmy Chapman?" I go, "Coach Hob." He goes, "Where the hell have you been?" And all of a sudden I hear Josh Thompson, Khabib, Jimmy, like all the like so like, "Oh, Jim, hey!" Like it was just so funny the way the guys work. I go, "Hey, what's up, guys?" And then Rocco comes out and he goes, "Look who dragged." He's like, "Look who the cat dragged in." And like these guys remembered me. I didn't realize that I had any kind of impact because that's the thing about the fight game. When you're out of it, you feel like no one cares, no one
Yeah.
knows you, and even at
Right.
me, even at my level. So here's the thing: as a kickboxer, I was very successful, but I wasn't. No, it wasn't televised. It wasn't something that people talked about. K1 had shut down as I became a pro. Like they stopped doing those K1 big Grand Prix tournaments. It was
Yeah.
a more it was overseas, and no one wanted to pay to have an American do that. So so I ended up even my amateur fights, then my pro MMA fights. I have 7 pro MMA fights that Sheerdog hasn't even got on the list. So it'll say like,
What?
yeah. So Sheerdog has me listed as one fight. In my 20-year career, my coaches
What?
have reached out. My coaches have reached out to them and said, "Hey, this is wrong." Because everybody who and this is how the story is going to end. I'm going to tell you the story. So Sheerdog has it, and so Glory Kickboxing had to call Sheerdog and say, "Look, this guy's got like hundreds of fights. Give so Glory Kickboxing modifies my actual record, so I would come in there automatically ranked because I hadn't fought in so many years. So they modified my record to I think it's 9-0 or 10-0, something like that. I don't remember what it was, but so I take the fight. I end up taking the fight for Bellator. I don't have to weigh in because it was the next day is the weigh in. I go in there and I'm in the stands because I'm in the press area and I'm texting Scott. I go, am I gonna have to do this fight? He goes, no. He's like, we'll pay you anyways for this price. Okay. So I text my wife. Thank God I don't have to fight. And so I get a little bit of money. Nice. He goes, and so but the next fight that came around 3 months later, he goes, you're gonna be on the card because I paid you for this. You're gonna be on the card. I'm like, okay, great. So I went to the gym. The first time I actually really met DC at this point. Because he was when I met him, he was just coming in as a coach, and I was leaving. He and I'm hitting the heavy bag, and he's just mean mugging me, staring me down, and I'm in the fighters room, and he's got his one of his guys, Mike, training him, which was a fitness trainer, and I'm kind of taking the space, and I hear him go down. I see him go downstairs and get Hob, and he goes, hey, this guy's in there. He goes, that's Jimmy Chapman, dude. He's like, you may want to work with him. And he goes, I told him to show up at this time so you could see him. I go, Hob, you want me to introduce myself? He goes, yeah, introduce yourself to him. So we start talking, and I go, hey, I hear you're fighting. You got a fight coming up? He goes, yeah, I'm supposed to fight John Jones. I said, okay. He goes, do you want to train? I said, this is your second time with John Jones.
Yeah.
He goes, yeah. I go, okay. Yeah, I'll train with you. And so he's like, be here at these times. And so I was 265. I was out of shape. I was huge. And so, but I hit really hard. And my leg kicks were still damaging. And so he wanted to learn how to kick really well. He had learned how to do middle kicks. He was good at everything. DC's really, but there was something about checking kicks and kicking when he realized he wanted to improve on. He became phenomenal. And I wasn't the guy who taught him. My presence was part of that. But so what would happen is that every time before practice, he and I would do leg drills. I would teach him Dutch kickboxing drills. So we do kickboxing drills, checking, kicking. And the UFC has tons of footage. It upsets me because the UFC has all kinds of footage, but they wouldn't put me on because Joe Silva and I got some arguments over my ability. Like I wanted to fight one time. Yeah. Anyway, so they wouldn't show me on some of the UFC. You see my back, or you see my neck, and I was nobody still. It's been years, but it's like, come on, guys. And so I ended up training with him that whole camp, and he ended up winning the belt from Rumble Johnson. Remember, so he was going to fight Jones. Jones ended up getting something happened. Then he ends up fighting Johnson. So that fight camp, what Rico Verhoeven had showed up. And he's Glory Kickboxing.
Yeah.
He shows up and he's working with DC that day. And I remember being so angry because I'm like, I could beat this guy. In my head, I'm thinking this, right? It's like that guy in Fresh Prince. I think I can beat Mike Tyson's. So I'm sparring with Rico Verhoeven. My mind wants to do it, but my body won't. And I'm getting pieced up everywhere. I'm like, man, I know I can beat this guy, but I just can't do it. My body, because it'd been 6 years. He just destroyed me. But I was so upset. But so that's the thing. That to me, it's a great story because my head said yes, my body said no, but it drove me into pushing myself to where I became, instead of being DC's first round in his rotations for the fights, I would be rounds 1 and 3, which are supposed to be the hardest rounds. So I would get the best of him at the beginning, and when he's warmed up, I get the best of him. And he realized that I didn't like going down. Because I hated getting off my back, and he would beat the crud, and DC would beat the crud of me, and he would talk trash to in a fun way. But I started picking up on some of his idiosyncrasies, and I learned how to touch him up in his left side when he dipped his leg. And one of the things I found out was that he started wearing these soccer shin guards with me because he didn't want to have to check my kicks. he ended up pulling out of that fight where he broke his leg. He broke his leg off. Like Chai Lewis Perry said, "Oh, he broke his leg off my head." He actually broke his leg off checking my kick. So,
What?
and so I told Chai, I said, why did you tell him it was me? He's like, I wanted the clout for it. I'm like, dude, come on, because he had brought Chai Lewis Perry in. He actually brought Chai Lewis Perry in for that John Jones training.
Right.
Perry ended up hurting himself, so he ended up being more of a coach to DC during that time. And Perry worked with me, and me and Perry became really good friends. We're still to this day friends, but we were. It was just this whole dichotomy. But that's how I got into it. I ended up fighting and winning and knocking my guy out. But in a span of, I took off almost 7 years. So from a January to May, January, February, March, April, May, I fought an MMA fight with not fighting, not training, but I just fought. Boom. And then I fought. Then I went from there. 2 weeks later, I drove to Minnesota because I didn't want to waste my money on the plane ticket, but I was going to make $3,800 cash for 5 rounds of kickboxing at a casino. And I started getting all these calls. Hey, come fight for us. Come fight. I'm like, cool, I'll do it. So I would take this. It was a cash grab. I'm like, I'm going to go in there. It's not a lot of money, but for kickboxing, Javier's like, that's a ton of money. He's like, you're only fighting how many rounds? I'm like, 5 3-minute rounds. He's like, that's nothing for you. He's like, yeah, go do it. He's like, you take anybody? I go, no, I'm going to coach myself. I didn't bring any coaches. I didn't have to pay anybody. I stayed in a hotel for 3 days. And the funny part is when I get there, they're paying me. I said, I want my money up front because I didn't want to be shorted. I've been shorted before by these guys.
Right.
So I said, and I wanted it in $10 bills. I was because they were being really mean. They were treating me like, because here's what happened. The guy they put me up against, Antonio Dvorak, Anthony Dvorak. He is a world champion, Olympian kickboxer. They call it the WAC champion. It's like in the Olympics.
Yeah.
6'7", 285 pounds. The guy, I thought it was being set up to be destroyed. He has like a 78-inch reach. No, 83-inch reach. My reach is 72 inches. He looks at me and he goes, dude. He goes, I'm fighting you. I go, yeah, I'm fighting you. We were like laughing at each other. He goes, dude, you're a pastor? I go, yeah. Because I had my Bible. I was preparing for a message. And he goes, I'm fighting a pastor. He's like, I don't know if I can do this. I said, you better get on. I'm gonna piece you up. Dude, I was joking with him. And he ends up coming into my locker room before the fight and wanting me to pray for him. So this is my opponent. Him and I are in our locker room praying for each other. Like, and I'm just talking about God and talking about his faith and how he's struggling in life. He's got some things going on with him. And I remember feeling like this kid needs somebody, right? And so that moment right there became a moment where I realized that I could do more in my career with reaching out to people. So I started reaching out to people and changing people's literally lives for them at least. And this guy ends up fighting. We fight. We go 4 rounds. The referee says I got hit I got hooked in the left side of my face. It was like I got destroyed, right? I fell. I didn't even know I fell. I got up. The ref says, look, I know you just fought 2 weeks ago. I saw the fight. It's kind of nasty. He goes, if you get punched one more time like that, I'm stopping the fight. I go, what do you mean? I said, I didn't get hit hard, but he didn't want to see me get hurt. Right. I go, dude, but I was beating Anthony. I was beating him in the fight. I was on points. I was beating him. I mean, I was kicking him, but he was just like a wall. But he couldn't keep up with the transitions and the movement. But he had such dynamic power and speed. So if I got caught or tired, I was done. Well, I still had a femur bruise. I was still from the fight. I was still kind of sore. He hit my femur one time and then did a kind of like a double jump knee under my chin. I wanted to take my 8 and then get up. By the number 7, he stopped this. I'm taking my. He's like, "No, you're done." So in the 4th round, he stops it. That was my first loss ever as a professional. It was my first loss. I wasn't upset that I lost because I was upset the way they stopped it. I'm like, dude, I just drove. But the good news is I had my money already. It was good. But the crowd. So the promoter comes over to the ring. He goes, "You're actually really good." I go, "What'd you bring me over here for? So he could beat me up?" He goes, "No." I go, "Yeah, you did." I said, "This guy's a world-class fighter. You told me it was just some guy." And Anthony goes, "You didn't tell him who I was?" He goes, "No." He's like, "He told me you had like nine pro kickboxing fights." He's like, "I got 32 kickboxing." I'm like, "Yeah, I know." I knew who he was like when I saw him, right? So that's the kind of stuff they pull just to get their fighters But I asked Anthony, I said, well, how much did they pay you? He's like, oh, I got $700. I'm like, okay, good job, bud. He got $700. I said, you know how much I got? He's like, what? You get like 350? I'm like, no, I got almost $4,000. He goes, what? I go, this is what 20 years of fighting will get you. So don't think it's a big deal. Like making a joke. But he calls me now every once in a while. He'll shoot me a message on Twitter private, then say, hey, can we talk? And so I talk to him. And so it's just funny, like these stories, right? There's so many of these stories. I mean, I can go on for hours, dude. I'm sorry. I'm just yapping away.
So it's so brilliant. It's so brilliant. But I don't want to get you out without talking to us about the Transformation U podcast and its
Oh yeah,
origins. Like where can people find it? How did it happen?
yeah. Let me do that.
I mean, you're perfect for podcasting.
Oh, thanks, man.
You
I
know,
appreciate it.
so talk to us about it.
So I was as a pastor in a corporate environment. There's a lot of rules people play, a lot of roles, and then rules. I've never been a rule follower. I kind of go up against the grain because I don't agree with. I don't pander to people, and that's a problem. In the Christian community, there's a lot of pandering and a lot of hypocrisy. But here's the thing. I'm a hypocrite too. I have my own issues. I say do things I shouldn't do. I want to do better, right? It's like that. So I'm not judging the community, but what I am, there's this need to fit in so much that people are willing to sacrifice who they are a little bit at a time until they're nothing. And I was seeing people come and sit in a church for years and there'd be no change, no nothing changed about them. They just like they were punching a ticket, getting a movie, getting their popcorn and your cup of coffee, and doing nothing. And it killed me because for me, this is what I said. Jesus didn't come so that I can be a better person. He came so I can live, and he makes dead men live, not me be a good guy. You know, anybody can be a good guy, but to truly live and to have a heart for people and love people is a different thing. And I saw people with all the money in the world, and they had everything they ever needed, but their appetites were for other things. And they thought because they sat in the right seat, they had the right clothes, they gave the right amount of money that would give them a closer seat to. And it's the opposite of what Christ said. And I constantly would teach, and people thought I was always condemning them. I never condemned. It's their own character and actions that would condemn them. And I said, you know what, God, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm done. And he told me you don't get to tell him when you're done. He literally told me in so many different ways. You're not going to get to say it, but here's what I'm going to do. You're going to make a shift. I'm going to transform you from who you are to something else. And so what he did is he took me from a guy who fell into ministry, and my first ministry experience was I became the lead pastor of a senior citizen church. I mean, I'm a young guy, and these guys have been retired pastors, missionaries. I mean, phenomenal men and women of God who love the Lord, love people with their heart. And they taught, and most guys at my age at 27 would have been with kids and youth and, growing through the bricks. Not me, man. And so I ended up doing that for 8 years. And I got called in to do some churches where I would do consulting. And if a church had a moral failure, I would go in there and try to revive that church with kind of revamping things. So like a consultant for churches. So that was kind of my gig as I was pastoring. And I said, you know what? I'll probably never get to work with kids or families. That's okay. This is my gig. And it was 2 years ago. This is how Transformation came in. It was 2 years ago. I was sitting there. I don't know how you're familiar with ministry, but Francis Chan's a popular pastor. He's a very popular pastor. He's all over the place. He's down in China right now. He moved his family to China. He's a guy who left his mega church to go and just be with the people, homeless people in San Francisco, just to love on people. And it was in 2007 where he said the only way people were ever going to be truly helping others is if they stop acting like manure and start acting like fertilizer. He says because if manure is good for fertilizer and manure are the same thing. It's like chicken poop, right? If it sits in a pile, it just starts to stink. But if you spread it out, you have a garden. He's like, that's the problem with the church. I said, dang, I love that. So it was 2 years ago. I was sitting there going, I'm done. We closed the doors. I told my wife, I said, look, I don't know what we're going to do, but this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to go back to construction. And I'm sitting out at my daughter's soccer stadium. She's about to go do soccer. And she's in ninth grade high school. This is 2 years ago, and she is playing club soccer for this like state team. It's a big team. It's called Round Rock Sports Complex, and they have like there's like 250 kids there, 300 parents in the stadium space, and they're about to do like an opening night. And one of the coaches from the UK comes up to me like, "Hey, I know you used to play sports, and I've seen some of your messages, like your motivational speeches you give to kids in sports." He goes, "Would you come do that for them?" I said, "Sure, why not?" So my daughter's like, "Dad, come on." So I went down there and I walked down there, and I'm like, "How much time do I have?" He's like, 30 minutes. I'm like, "Are you kidding me?" I said, "I'm gonna go home. Like I'm done, right? Where kids want to go to practice, I got
Yeah.
something." I spent 5 minutes talking. I started seeing kids cry. I started seeing parents hang their head down. I started seeing kids grab their arms. I thought, like I had this like flood of emotions, and I started to see things like I've never seen before. I saw a girl cutting herself. Like while I'm talking, I see a girl cutting her, not physically but emotionally. I saw a boy who was ashamed of himself. I saw a mom who was on the verge of leaving her husband. Like it was being flooded in my head, and people like, some people say that's crazy, and so I ended up I started talking about making a shift in your life. That you have to make a shift. You have to be willing to go from one side to the other, and you have to be willing to take your net and just drop it. So it doesn't take a lot. And sometimes boats have an they have their udder, and you just turn it a little bit, and the boat turns. And too often we think that our life is stuck up against this one way, but we can actually shift a little bit. And at that moment, I said, if anybody's interested in that shift, why don't you come down here with me? We'll just talk. I had 35 kids come down and parents come down and say, we need help. I said, thank you. And so that was it. And so I realized that I can do more with kids from like, I've kind of developed like 12 years old to up to like young adults, to like college kids. I can do more good because I believe that an adult who speaks into a child's life can change their life. Like if they're consistent, their efforts there, but we can also screw it up if we're consistently screwing up. So I feel like these kids need a difference. And so I ended up investing into these kids, and then I had a girl from one of my congregation members. They said, "Hey, my daughter's in Andice in this town over here, in a meth house." I went and kicked in the doors, pulled her out, got her help, got her cleaned up. The drug dealer got help, got cleaned up. This was one of the hardest meth houses. One of the kids, his dad was an officer, police officer. I mean, that's just. I mean, this is like out of a movie. And I told my wife, I said, if this is why we moved to Texas, then I'm down with it. This is it. We'll move down with it. So Transformation U became when COVID came. Right before COVID, I got a call from I was in Dallas, and there was a producer of a television station called Christian Turner Broadcast Network, which is like the Christian satellite network. You'll see like Joyce Meyer TV and all these, and some weird people and then some normal people. And so I said, well, are you represent like this whole genre of like televangelists? They go, yeah, but we don't just do that. We're looking for somebody who's going to come and speak truth and also kind of share story as a people, not just pander for money and stuff. I said, yeah. I go, I won't ask for a dime. I said, but if you give me a platform, I said, I will help change the world. That was my idea. And I go, I'll give a transformation like you'll never imagine. And so we started talking, and they go, what's the name of your ministry? And at first I called it Bridging the Gap because I wanted to be a bridge or a cross that someone could walk on to get to that next end. I said, no, it's gonna be out of Romans 12, which is I should be transformed into the image of my Creator, but not and be conformed to His image, not the image of the world, that what the world tells me to be. And that was the whole idea: is I'm going to transform into my Creator, my coach, my mentor, my Father, and that right there became the platform. And so when the television network said, hey, we want you, we'll bring you on, we'll give you a platform to reach 300,000 people a week every Wednesday night at 7 to 7:30, I said, deal. All I had to do was move to North Carolina. I said, no, I'm not doing it. I already moved my family, we're not doing it. They said, well, can you find a place in Texas? Everybody rejected me because in Austin's where all the studios are.
Right.
Even though I have a different viewpoint in some areas, I've never been discussed. I've never had like some sort of bigotry, and they thought that I was just going to cause hate, and so I said, no, you can't do it. So I had libraries tell me no. I mean, I was looking for any place like with a background, right?
Yeah.
And finally, because I had churches that said yes, but it became like I got to do it on their schedule and all that. I'm like, nah, I can't do that. So I ended up telling them, look, I can't find a place right now. And they said, well, there's a big thing coming in the United States happening called COVID. I go, yeah, I know what it is. They go, we're gonna put a pin in that. They go, why don't you get yourself a good camera and a mic, do a streamlined broadcast, get your momentum going, and then once you feel like you can go out there, get a studio. It's okay. So we started doing this, and it actually, I love it. I didn't realize podcasting was like this. To me, it's just
Yeah.
a broadcast, right?
Yeah.
And I've when I started seeing a local radio station picked up our show, I started like Facebook. Facebook for me isn't a big audience, but when I see the downloads of the other stuff, I'm like, oh, that's cool. And so
Yeah.
now I'm trying to. So now I'm taking that, going, okay. So with Transformation U, here's how it goes. I just met with the Round Rock the Round Rock School District and the Georgetown School District. They're board of trustees. And I said, I have a curriculum that I want to bring into your school system. And they said, what's the curriculum? I said, well, here's the deal. I'm not going to give it to you, but I'll tell you about it. Because if I give it to you, you'll take it. I know they will. And I said, but now I share it with anybody because I think I want them to take it. If anybody does this, not me, I don't care, right? But it focuses on the adaptability and the emotional adaptability. So basically, people have been focused on their IQ their whole life. Oh, how smart are you? How much can you memorize? I said, that's not what life's about. Life is about people being able to adapt to situations
Yeah.
and respond appropriately. So are you listening? And then are you digesting? And then are you acting? Think, practice, execute, right? Over and over and over. Think, practice, execute. And if we teach our kids right now how to deal with their pain, how to deal with their struggles and their problems, how to digest controversy or an argument and say, okay, I hear your point, but this is where I see it differently. We're not going to have a young man like Jordan San Miguel, who's 16 years old in my daughter's class, hang himself. 2 weeks ago, I had a young man hang himself who you would think was he's one of the most beautiful kids. If you go on my Facebook page, you'll see his family. One of the most beautiful kids I've ever seen. Smile, everything. This kid would bring joy into anybody's heart. Nobody knew that as COVID started, his girlfriend had broken up with him. Something had happened where he started cutting himself. Now,
Oh, wow.
I believe that our kids are susceptible to I'd say evil, demonic things that happen. And then people can say, "Oh, you're just crazy," but if even in the secular world, people who don't believe in God, they believe in manifestation, right? Oh, if you think it, you believe it, you'll see it, it'll come to you. That's all that is people. Whatever you think and focus on, you become. If I think about fighting, I become fighting. If I think about podcasting, I'll learn everything about it.
Yeah.
If I watch Instagram and TikTok and look at filth all day, guess what? If I listen to Cardi B's WAP and I listen to the lyrics and I repeat that in my head every day, do you not think that I'm not going to start thinking like that? So these kids they become what they think, and they start to become really dangerous. So my thought is this: is that I want our children to have a chance at combating these things, whether it's through their faith or it's through their own mind and their heart. What I want them to do is stand on their own 2 feet, and I want them to walk a line that they're going to be proud of. That they're not going to say, "Oh, I'm ashamed of it and I can't show my face. I better go hide," or I just continue what I'm doing. No, they're going to say, "You know what? I need to make a shift. I need to transform it." So that curriculum has a whole depth to it. We can get into that another time. But here's what I'm doing. I'm not teaching the kids it. I'm going to the teachers. The teachers are going to get the work first. The teachers are going to learn that their job is is a passion. It's not just a job. Their passion is going to become changing lives, not teaching. Because they're more than teachers. They got to be life changers, right? When they realize that they're life changers, they will become educators. But until they realize that they're life changers, that they have the power and ability to transform a kid's life, truly do that, they will never be more than a paper pusher who just says, "Here, you read this like a parrot." Brat, read this, brat. It's like that's all parrots do. And I don't want our kids to be parrots, man. And so that's the whole idea of Transformation U. And so we'll see. I still get pushed up against, hey, you have a doctorate, you have a PhD. Like, come on. No, I have life. I have life.
Yeah.
I have poverty. I have everything. Yeah. So,
Absolutely. And ask Joe Rogan how many broadcasting degrees that he has, but he's got the biggest podcast in the world, and I mean, just moved to Texas, funny enough, in Austin, so it's,
I'm actually looking forward to see this place. Yeah. Yeah, he's got some amazing stuff, man. That guy, he actually invited me to Fear Factor when I was at AKA. I couldn't go because I couldn't go. I was going to be on the show. I could not. I had my contract. I couldn't go because I had an engineering meeting for a house I was building. And if I didn't get this meeting
Yeah.
done, if I didn't get them signed off, we'd be another 6 months delayed. I told my wife, I said, I can make 50 grand easily doing this Fear Factor. She's like, Jim, you can make that doing this and not lose a job. I'm like, all right. So I the good head on her because I probably wouldn't have eaten whatever they had me eat. I wouldn't have jumped off, but it was the idea like I had this opportunity, but it's just funny. They're funny little stories, right? And he's had
Yeah.
thousands of stuff like that. So yes.
I
But
think
it's
it's
all good.
brilliant. I think
Yeah.
it's brilliant. Absolutely. And all of this, the sum of everything that you've been through has led you here during this unique, at this unique path during this unique time in our history, man.
Yeah.
Man, I'm subscribed to Transformation U. You guys should too, for sure. But I mean, to find out more about Transformation U and what you're doing, James, where can people find you on social media?
So at this point, you can just go to transformation_u on Instagram. Or if you go to Facebook, you just click on my little Facebook ad. I'm not good with social media or any of that stuff. We're just doing it. We're just creating the websites, all that stuff. What I'll do is when I get into a place where I get my computer, I'll link some stuff up. I'll forward it to you, and you just put it on your page. If you can do that. And then what I'd like to do is I want to set up something for us. I'd like to have you. I'm on every Sunday, Tuesday, Thursday. I'd love to have you on
I'm
and
in.
share.
I'm
Yeah,
totally in.
that'd be awesome. Yeah, because I think that it's good to have more people communicating and together. And I won't talk so much next time.
No, I love it. I love it, and that's the thing. It's just like people to come in and share their stories. Like I think you and Frank Trigg have kind of been my easiest ones. Where
Oh
like
yeah.
I just sit back and let you guys go. Just go. I'm all
Oh,
right.
you had Trig on there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Did he tell you about his fight with Bruce Buffer?
Yeah, I know, and Barnett, who too, and you know, like they've
Yeah,
all
Josh
been on.
Barnett's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, all we did was talk about pro wrestling. That's all we did.
Yeah, see, that's something I've never. I was a kid. I loved pro wrestling. I had my Hulk pillow, and my cousin and I would fight each other. But I never got into it. As after I left, like fifth grade, I was done with it. But I have friends in college that were like, "It's wrestling. We're not doing anything else but
Yeah.
watching it." I mean, even to this day, I go grown men who love it, and I see that. I see it's fun. I just haven't
Yeah.
gotten back into it.
Well, even Baroni, right? So Josh Barnett, I
Oh
don't know
yeah,
if you
he's
know,
hilarious, man.
he basically did this Josh Barnett's Bloodsport, and that was kind of piggybacked off of Matt Riddle, former
Yes.
UFC fighter, and now he's in WWE. But
Yeah.
they had this concept where they take shoot fighters, kind of like the rings and UWSI of
Yeah.
Japan, right?
Yes.
But it's no ropes and just grapples and holds and selling an elbow, like
Yeah.
as close to mixed martial arts as pro wrestling can be. And Phil Baroni was on the first card. He was actually the first match on the first card during Josh Barnett's Bloodsport.
That's
So
amazing, dude. That's amazing. Hey, speaking of wrestling, I got to do this because I still want to fight this guy. What's his name? He went to Bellator. So I was supposed to fight him twice now. Got it. My brain's not working. He transferred from he was the world UFC or the WWF champion. Then he went to Bellator to fight, actual fight. The Jake Hager.
Hager, yeah, okay,
So
yeah.
what's his real name? Like Jake Swagger, something like that.
No, Hager is his real name, and Jack Swagger is
Jack
his
Swagger. So
wrestling
check this
name.
out. So Jack Swagger, I get a call in Texas last year saying, "Hey, because I just fought in Houston on the kickboxing fight, and that was another. Yeah, I fought another guy in Houston who just fought in a tournament for Glory. I was fighting Glory, and what's his name? Swagger. Yeah, Jack Swagger.
Yeah,
His agent reached out to said that we want a guy that's not a good wrestler or doesn't wrestle, not a good wrestler, not a wrestler, but Scott Coker's like, I want to, and they said we know this guy from AKA. His name, he's like kind of an older guy. We need to season the guy that he can go in and kind of like have a good fight with. They'll respect him because it's Jim, but he'll just beat him. They're like no, you understand that you're not going to beat Jim Chapman. He goes, no. Oh no, he doesn't have any fight. This guy wants to fight you. He's like, it's a bad fight for him. He goes, but it could be a bad fight for you if he gets you on the ground because he's a wrestler. He's a good wrestler. I'm like, all right, whatever. I don't even know who he is. I can't figure out who he is. And Jane Esco is like calling. She sets up the contracts and the fights, and she goes, you don't know who he is? I go, clearly, you guys, he's such a big name. I said, let me name my price this one. So I named my price. It was one of the biggest prices I've ever named. They go, okay. Didn't even bat an eye. And usually, like, I was thinking, like, oh, I hope I can make with Bellator like 25 grand. I said, I want 50K. I want 50K and 50K. They're like, let me get back to you. They called me back. They said, okay. I've never had that before, right? I've never had that. And they called.
Oh man, these are great. These are great stories.
Called me back like a day later with my management and said, we'll give you a 25 to win. I make a little video and I'm having fun because I'm a guy having fun. I go and I made this little video. I'm like, hey, so I'm looking at this guy, Jack Swagger. People can pay him to do like, hey, happy birthday to you and all that stuff. You know what? These pro guys will on their Twitter account. You can give if you fill out what you want them to write and say. You pay them $50 and they'll send a little video of a happy birthday. Da da da. I spent $50 to have him wish me happy birthday. It was my birthday, so he does this little video. I'm waiting for it to come in, and then I get a little message, not funny, like just not funny, right? Because he realizes that's the guy I signed the contract with, so he doesn't. He's like, guy's afraid of me. I'm like, oh, this is fun now. I've never been a trash talker ever, and so I start digging in. I'm on Twitter and I'm like, hey, is this like? I said, I had no freebies. I said, there's no freebies for cherry pickers. I said, you got me now, buddy. Made a joke. I said that cherry picking freebies. And so he goes and does it. He's like, he wants to do a warm-up fight. So he does a warm-up fight. And he gets on and he starts like acting all tough. And he held a choke too long. He's a jerk. And so what's it called? I Twitter, and one of the guys like Josh Thompson goes, is on doing his thing, his interview on Bellator. And I tweet Josh Thompson. I said, ask him. He's like, I can't do that. I'll get fired. I'm like, dude, just ask him. And I said, call him out for me. Like, make a joke. He's like, no, I'll get fired. He's like, that guy's terrified. So his wife ends up reaching out and saying, his wife says, like, kind of like retweet something like him like holding his arms up like he was a winner. And so I reach out to him. I said, anybody's a winner when they're set up. Like I said, I guess Bellator's now fake like your career, like made a joke. And I was being serious. Like, I'm like, they just handed some guy to you and you're just basically being a jerk to him. And the guy didn't deserve what he did. And, I said, I promise you're going to hurt when I fight you. I said, I promise you. I said, you better train really hard. And so I'm getting ready for this fight between he and I. Not only does he block me on Twitter, what a coward. Blocks me on Twitter. He's a friend of Chael Sonnen, right? Chael Sonnen would never allow that. He's the guy. I'm not me. He's the guy, right? He's trying to be a heel, but he's scared. So I have called him out. I've went to his gym, called him out like on social media. They don't want anything to do. So I realized that I told Scott, I said, are you guys protecting this guy? He's like, no, but his management is. They know now that you will hurt him. And so I say this openly, saying I want to end my career, really end my career, beating him up. So if you ever want to get a hold of Jake Swagger, let him know that I miss him. And he's had 2 years to train now, or 1 year to train. He can come see me anytime he wants.
We might be Facebook friends. So
that's awesome. Get a hold of him. Yeah, because here's the thing: he won't speak to me. I've never been demoralizing. I don't like try to say anything trashy. I just like, hey, let's fight. Come on, dude. But you can't say you're gonna be a world champion if you can't go through little old me. Come on. I'm 42 years old, man. Come on.
Ooh, buddy. Ooh.
So if he tell him, hey, put it this way: he's doing me a favor because I need to buy my daughter's med school tuition. So if he can get that done, I'll get the right sponsors. I got med school paid for. We're good to go. So it's for a good cause. Trust me, the fight's for a good cause. I will not permanently hurt him. He'll get my daughter to med school. He can do whatever he wants if he wins. I don't care. But he won't win. But we'll be good.
Oh, dang. Oh, man. This is literally transforming. I mean, this is a transformation. You know, this is.
You just tapped into something that's very important to me, which is him fighting me because he promised he was going to fight me. And I'm 42, and I know my body's got a few more years left, but I'm not going to be able to just pick it up and train. So I need him to know that he's got. All I need is 6 weeks. I don't even need 8 weeks or 10 weeks, 12 weeks. 6 weeks to run. I'll run. I won't even spar. I'll just run because it's going to be a fight. It's just going to be a fight. I'm not going to get good at wrestling in that time.
And you know what? what's kind of funny because I had JW Kaiser on who fought him at the forum, and well, it had to be removed for a litany of
Oh,
reasons, but yeah,
it got removed.
I, I was asked to remove it because some things were said. So
Okay.
we're gonna have JW back on, but yeah, it's funny because JW and then the other guy that Hager fought,
Yeah.
essentially they're fighting each other October 9th. So it's crazy. Like,
Yeah, it's crazy.
yeah,
Yeah, and
all right,
I haven't reached out to Scott, so I should send you the tweets that I've sent to Scott and Jane privately and to him. If I can see if find them, I gotta figure out find them because they usually will respond to me instantly or with text message. They're like they know when they don't when you say something that's truthful and they don't respond, you know that it's truth. It's like giving away. It's like giving it away. And it's like, come on, dude. I've never called, I've never like tried to take his thunder. I've never tried to be mean. I just don't like somebody saying, "Oh, I got you. I'll beat you up," and all of a sudden you find out I'm not your easy walk in the park. And I know he's training kickboxing. I know he wanted to come to our gym and train. He wanted to. He wasn't allowed to. I'm
yeah,
in Texas. They know that because Javier's like that spot's reserved for Jim first. Jim comes down here first, and DC knows him. He's friends, like kind of friends. And DC is like, dude, that's a dumb fight.
well, I noticed after the he got the AEW money doing wrestling, like his Bellator career. Because I mean, theoretically speaking, he still signed to Bellator,
Yeah,
but I mean, at the time he was with like Impact Wrestling, and Impact Wrestling had somewhat of a working relationship with Bellator. That's why you saw Bobby Lashley fight for Bellator,
yeah,
and Hagen fought for Bellator.
yeah.
But now that Lashley's back with the WWE and Hager's with AEW, there's no iteration of them fighting for Bellator anymore. So I don't know. There might be like a TV deal, something or other,
Yeah.
or whatever. But yeah, but we'll make it happen. We'll make it
Yeah.
happen.
All right, man. All
There's
right.
a litany of stuff here, which I'm gonna slide into your DMs for a bit because I've got an idea. But dude, James, it's been incredible talking to you, dude.
You too,
Like,
buddy.
yeah, I've got some things like percolating on the brain, so I'm gonna
Yeah.
message you.
All right, buddy. I'll talk to you soon. Hey, let's hook up on back on the message board, and we'll set something
Yeah,
up for next week or so for you.
100%, brother.
Appreciate you.
All right,
Thanks
have
to
a
all the
great
fans
day.
who watch you
You
guys.
guys
Thank
like,
you.
share, and subscribe according to Woods. I'm just saying.
All right.
Oh yeah, and while you're at it, transformation you.
Thank you.
Woo.